Hello guys, and welcome back to yet another marvelous video. All the Marvel fans out there, get ready, because we're going to explore a character whose origins are sad, but whose powers are quite astounding. It's none other than the Chameleon. If your favorite Marvel superhero is Spider-Man, then I'm sure you're quite familiar with the Chameleon's name. Well, in today's video, we'll be exploring 10 mind-blowing facts about him that you might have missed out on. But before we get into our exploration, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Now get your popcorn ready and let's begin. Who is Chameleon? This character was not always known as the Chameleon. His real name is Dmitry Nikolaevich Smerdyakov, and yes, he is a Russian citizen. The one thing that will surprise you about him is his parentage. His father is the well-known Grand Duke Nikolai Kravenov, and his mother is a nobody, a mere servant girl, Sonya Smerdyakov. If you're wondering where you've heard the name of Kravenov before, let us jog your memory. Dmitry is the half-brother of Sergei Kravenov, whom we all know and love as Kraven the Hunter. Even though Dmitry is technically part of the Kravenov family, while growing up, no one in the house liked him. His father hated his very existence, and his mother considered him a disgrace to the family, but one would assume that maybe he shared some brotherly love. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. Even Sergei hated him, but not as much as his parents. Although the only time Sergei used to interact with Dmitry was to bother him or beat him up. While Dmitry was still living with the Kravenov family, he didn't realize that his life was soon about to change completely. His powers of being able to disguise himself soon caught the attention of one of the prominent figures in the underworld, Gustav Fiers. People also called him the Gentleman, but the actual life-changing event took place when Fiers introduced Dmitry to his brother Karl Fiers, who's a very well-known assassin and calls himself the Finisher. Karl actually runs an academy where he takes in people like Dmitry to help them hone their skills. Soon, Dmitry was taken to his school for the cover arts, never to be heard from the Kravenov family again. Karl helps all his students in becoming sleeper agents and flawless impersonators who he calls chameleons. Eventually, as Dmitry learned new things and honed his skills, he became the top student and Karl's prized possession from the lot. This is when Dmitry came to be known as the Chameleon. Chameleon as Spider-Man's first supervillain. This might come as a surprise to some of you, because when we think of Spider-Man's strong opponents, the only people who come to mind are Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus. But no matter how great these supervillains have been, the truth is that Chameleon is Spider-Man's first actual supervillain. You might think that's not possible, because when we first met Spider-Man in the Amazing Fantasy issue 15, he was seen fighting a thief. But the difference between the thief and the Chameleon is that the thief is not a supervillain. He had no superpowers, but the Chameleon does, so that makes him Spider-Man's first actual supervillain. He was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and made his first appearance in the 1962 comic book The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1. He appears in the plot titled Spider-Man vs. the Chameleon. Before the events of this plot take place, we find out that Spider-Man is engaged in finding a job. Ben Parker has died, and so Peter Parker has been trying to use his powers as Spider-Man to earn some money. But at the same time, he doesn't want the public to think that he's just a phony who wants to stay relevant by doing publicity stunts. In the midst of all this, he decides to go speak to the Fantastic Four and possibly join their crew, so that he can also earn money the way they do. Unfortunately, they reveal to him that they operate as a non-profit organization. This means that even if Spider-Man joins them, his money issues are not going to be solved. At the same time, we see the Chameleon making use of his powers with the help of his multi-pocket disguise vest. In New York City, there's a place known as the Lark Building, where the city's defense plans are kept. Chameleon disguises himself and enters the building to steal these plans. After some time, he gets wind of Spider-Man's financial situation, so he comes up with a plan to use this to his advantage, get his work done, and also ruin Spider-Man's reputation in the process. He calls up Spider-Man using a frequency that can only be picked up by his spider sense, and pretends to offer him a job at the Lark Building. Now, before our friendly neighborhood hero could arrive, Chameleon disguises himself as Spider-Man and infiltrates the Lark Building again. This time, he's come to finish what he started, and ends up stealing all the remaining missile defense plans. Eventually, the moment Chameleon makes his exit, Spider-Man enters the building and is surrounded by the security guards. Naturally, they assume Spider-Man to be the thief due to the CCTV footage. You see, Chameleon is that good at what he does. Well, luckily, Spider-Man is able to escape from the security guards and tracks down Chameleon, who's running away in a helicopter toward a Soviet submarine. But before Chameleon can successfully escape, Spider-Man gets a hold of him by taking over the helicopter, which lands them both back in a Lark Building. Once again, Chameleon uses his clever skills and disguises himself as one of the security guards so that he doesn't get caught. But Spider-Man fights him, and Chameleon is defeated. But this still doesn't put an end to Spider-Man's troubles, because the people believe that Spider-Man has disguised himself as the Chameleon to gain publicity points. I guess it was the Chameleon's lucky day. The origins of Chameleon's superpowers. You might be wondering, how exactly did the Chameleon get his powers? After all, it was not like he was ever bitten by a radioactive spider. Well, initially, Dimitri didn't have any superpower. He was just exceptionally good at impersonation, and some makeup and costume changes used to do the trick. Eventually, his powers were made natural through surgery. Basically, a special serum was given to him that would mutate with the pigmentation of his skin, and also the epidermis. Through this serum inside his body, he can change his appearance to anyone he wants at will, without the need for his special belt. In fact, his face is not the only thing that changes. Even his hair, eyes, and body shape can change based on the person. Another interesting thing is that he has technically taken the same serums over the years as his half-brother Kraven. This meant that even his body was somewhat physically augmented. However, the Chameleon is definitely not as strong as Kraven the Hunter, since the levels of their augmentation are different. It gives him enhanced endurance, enhanced strength, enhanced durability, and even lowers his rate of aging as compared to other humans. So we can assume that maybe both Chameleon and Kraven are of the same age. So after all these changes that his body went through, Chameleon's powers became more real and gave him a stronger edge over his opponents. But soon, Dimitri became more evil and cruel in his ways. He started to literally remove the faces of people he would defeat. Since his powers enabled him to mimic the voices of all his victims, he decided to live their lives so that he could fix their life problems. Now this is some twisted logic of trying to act as a tragic hero, I guess. Chameleon's arsenal and gadgets. We already know that in the beginning, Chameleon didn't have superpowers, but he gained them later. Well, before attaining superpowers, his arsenal only consisted of makeup items, some other cosmetics, and different costumes. A simple gadget that he had was something like a utility belt, which released a gas that would help him change his facial features. It could also hold several different masks. After he was surgically given powers, his arsenal also had to go through some changes. His retro belt was transformed into a computer belt in order to help him disguise as any person he encounters. This belt would record the appearance of a person and send that information into a visual synthesizer. The belt also has memory banks, which have a huge storage space to store all these images. When the Chameleon wants to disguise himself as one of the people whose images are stored in his belt, he enters a code on his belt's keypad, and through some electrical signals, his body starts to change. This computerized belt was very essential to properly trigger and activate his innate powers. Without it, he would once again become powerless. Apart from this, the clothes that he wears are also made of special fabric, known as memory material. With the help of this, his clothes can change colors or reshape themselves at will. This occurs when the Chameleon enters the code into his belt to disguise himself as someone else. He also carries knockout darts in the form of air pistols, which contain anesthetics that render Chameleon's victims unconscious for a long time. He also uses a smoke bomb that can create an opaque mist of around 40 feet radius. This is his escape technique. Chameleon's relationship with his half-brother, Kraven the Hunter. At this point, we already know that Dimitri did not have a great childhood. When he was a kid, Sergei Kravenov never treated him like a brother. Eventually, Dimitri developed the need to constantly impress Sergei and get his approval. So in order to achieve that, he would use his special impersonation skills and trick his friends and neighbors just so Sergei would notice him and start liking him more. In fact, this thought process psychologically scarred him so much that he now suppressed his identity entirely, and started to believe that Sergei had always been his friend and not a brother. That's sure to send anyone into therapy. After moving out of the house and becoming the Chameleon, Dimitri gained our friendly neighborhood superhero as his main adversary. Even at this point in his life, Chameleon wanted to prove to Kraven the Hunter that he was a worthy brother and was equally strong. He decided that the best way to prove his strength would be by defeating Iron Man. So Chameleon figured out a way to contact Iron Man and posed himself as Captain America. Through his exceptional disguising skills, Chameleon is able to convince Iron Man that he's the real Captain America and that the one residing at Avengers Mansion is in fact Chameleon. So Iron Man went to fight the supposedly fake Captain America while Chameleon was happily overlooking the battle from a safe distance. Unfortunately, he was soon discovered by Giant Man, and his plan failed. Despite not succeeding in this endeavor, Chameleon still wanted to show Kraven the Hunter that he was the superior brother. So over time, he joined several organizations and worked for the likes of Hydra and the Lobo brothers. Clearly, Chameleon has some unresolved childhood issues. What happens to the Chameleon after Kraven the Hunter's death? Now, this is when things got crazy in Dimitri's life. Kraven the Hunter died in the story arc Kraven's Last Hunt, which is known as one of the best story arcs in Spider-Man's history to this day. After his brother's death, Chameleon became the angriest version of himself. He wanted to take revenge on Spider-Man, and even though the two have always been enemies, Chameleon wanted to physically and psychologically destroy Spider-Man now more than ever. So he decided to team up with Harry Osborn, because even he wanted to take revenge on Spider-Man for the death of his father, Norman Osborn. This was probably one of the best decisions of Chameleon's life, because Harry knew the real identity of Spider-Man. Soon enough, Chameleon found out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man and started plotting his great revenge. He created 2 lifelike android models of Peter's parents and controlled them. He wanted Spider-Man to feel the loss of someone else, so he presented these models as Peter's parents who have come back to life, only for Peter to lose them again. But the cost of such a devious plan ended up being far more damaging than Chameleon anticipated. Sure, it psychologically broke Spider-Man, but also Chameleon himself. The damage was so severe that Chameleon ended up in the Ravencroft Asylum for quite some time. Who were the Exterminators? If we know one thing about Chameleon for sure, then it's that he will never stop going after Spider-Man no matter what happens. So after he ran away from the Ravencroft Asylum, he decided to form a team of supervillains who also hated Spider-Man. This team was known as the Exterminators because they were going to exterminate Spider-Man. They made their first appearance in the comic book titled The Sensational Spider-Man, Volume 2, Issue 29. This storyline is known as the Deadly Foes of Peter Parker, and it divided into 3 parts. Chameleon started recruiting supervillains one by one, and even threatened them if they refused to join his mission. So, when they make their first appearance, we find Chameleon paying a visit to the Molten Man. When Molten Man calls Chameleon's plan a futile attempt, he threatens to kill his nephew. Now, Molten Man has no option but to become part of the Exterminators. While this is going on, we find Peter fighting against Will-O-the-Wisp and Scarecrow. The battle ends in Peter's victory due to the enhanced abilities granted to him by his new costume. In the next part of the storyline, Electro attacks Spider-Man at the Whitney Museum of Art, but once again, the battle ends with Spidey's victory. Eventually, as per the Exterminator's plan, Liz Allen tricks Peter into a trap set for him. So at this point, it might be confusing as to how many supervillains are actually part of the Exterminators. Well, let's clear that up for you. Apart from Chameleon, the team has Electro, Molten Man, Scarecrow, Swarm, and Will-O-the-Wisp. Chameleon is part of other teams. In the past, Dimitri has been part of a supervillain team known as the Sinister 12. Much like Chameleon's idea of creating a team to fight against Spider-Man, this team was created by the infamous supervillain Norman Osborn. He was in prison when he created the Sinister 12, and until his escape, Mac Gargan, aka the Scorpion, was the leader. When Spider-Man was forced to break Osborn free from prison, Chameleon was among the 12 supervillains waiting to attack him. Apart from this, Chameleon has also been a part of another team known as the Sinister Six. This team was founded by Dr. Octopus. Although he's not part of the Sinister Six anymore, he was there when Spider-Man destroyed their plan to detonate an Air Force base by sending micro-Octobots. Chameleon was also present when the team attacked Spidey on a Caribbean island. He also helped the team in fighting the Intelligentsia by infiltrating the group. He did so by disguising himself as Claw. Eventually, even the team known as MODOK's 11 tried to recruit Chameleon for his skills. This team is made of 8 villains who were hired by MODOK. He wanted to hire Chameleon, but didn't know that it was not the real guy, because at the time, Chameleon was already in disguise as Ultra Adaptoid, which was created by AIM and controlled by his rival Monica Rappaccini. Chameleon in the animated world. The first time we see Chameleon becoming part of the animated world is in the series The Marvel Superheroes, which came out in 1966. Here, he's voiced by Tom Harvey. Next, he appears in the 1981 animated series titled Spider-Man, which ran only until 1982. Chameleon appears in just one episode titled Arsenic and Aunt May, and was voiced by John H. Meyer. Another television series that ran from 1981 to 1983 was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, where Chameleon appeared in the episode 7 Little Superheroes and was voiced by Hans Conried. A different version of Chameleon appears in the 1994 series of Spider-Man, where Jim Cummings is the voice. In this TV series, he's portrayed as the foster son of the Red Skull and appears to be a hitman and a spy for the Kingpin's team, Insidious 6. His computerized belt is one of his main gadgets that helps him make the best use of his disguises. Eventually, experiments are performed on him to give him the natural ability to shapeshift. Later on, Chameleon is voiced by Steve Blum in the series The Spectacular Spider-Man. His character also appears in Mashup, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, voiced by James Arnold Taylor, and in the 2017 series of Marvel's Spider-Man, voiced by Patton Oswalt. Here, he's involved in the storyline of Bring On the Bad Guys.
That is Dimitri, And this...
Chameleon in the MCU. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Dmitry Smirdyakov makes an appearance in the 2019 film Spider-Man: Far From Home. He didn't have a major role in the film, but he was hired by Nick Fury to be part of his crew to help Mysterio fight against the Elementals. For the most part of the film, Dmitry's job was just to watch over Peter Parker. In fact, he even had to become a bus driver for Peter's school trip to Austria. He's present when Mysterio and Spider-Man interact for the first time, and in all of Nick Fury's briefings. Basically, apart from acting as a spy, it seemed like he was also sort of babysitting Parker. Other versions of the Chameleon. There are several different versions of the Chameleon that exist in the Marvel Universe, and they only have little in common with the original story of the Chameleon. Most of these versions come from different Earths. So from Earth 928, his version is shown in Marvel 2099, but his name is Major Jones. His abilities are the same as the original Chameleon since they come from the Chameleon drug. The next version is from Earth 9500, which appears in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Although the main power of shapeshifting is the same, he does it by taking a sample of the victim's DNA. In this storyline, he manages to frame Sandman's innocent father for a murder. Another alternate version comes from Earth 71490, The Edge of Spider-Verse, Volume 2, Issue 5. Even in this series, he has the same powers that allow him to shapeshift. The next version appears in Marvel Noir from Earth 90214. His abilities are slightly different here, since his body is somewhat clay-like, and he works for Norman Osborn. Lastly, his character also comes from Earth 1610 in Ultimate Marvel, where he can not only shapeshift, but also has the power to wield energy and fire energy blasts when he's fighting Peter Parker.
Let me out of here!
Marvelous verdict. Well guys, with that, we've come to the end of yet another Marvelous video. If you're a real Marvel fan from the comics, then I'm sure you might have noticed some of these facts about this character. After finding out so many interesting things about the Chameleon, I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely dying for his proper introduction into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So what are some of the things that you loved about this character? Is there any particular quality about the Chameleon that you liked the most? What did you think about his different versions? I'm quite positive that if there's ever a film that just showcases his different versions in the parallel universes, then it will be a big hit. Well, are there any other characters from the Marvel Universe that you'd like for us to explore? Let us know about it in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe on your way out. It means the world to us when you help us grow. Until next time guys, it's goodbye. Have a good one.